to section 5.2, which is about test planning and estimation. What is the purpose and context of test plan? Basically, test plan outlines the test activities for development and maintenance projects, right? Like whether the project is development project or maintenance project, test plan it outlines the test activities for that testing. And test plan also determines the scope, right? What needs to be done, what should not be done, like scope basically. Objectives, why we are doing, what is the end objective of testing, and risks of testing, right? If we are using risk based approach, like risks of testing, they are also outlined. Defining overall approach of testing, what would be the overall approach of testing, and then integrating and coordinating the test activities into software lifecycle. So basically, generally integrating activities, like we need to fit our activities into the software lifecycle employed by the organization or team. So making decision about what to test, okay, what needs to be tested, and who are the people who should be on board, and planning other resources as required, and scheduling of the test analysis, design, implementation, execution, evaluation of activities. So scheduling is done for analysis, design, implementation, and execution. And then also selecting metrics for test monitoring and control. Okay? Which metrics are most suited for monitoring and control, and budgeting the test activity. So which activity should consume how much budget. Okay, determine the level of detail and structure of test documentation. How detailed we want the test documentation is also decided by the test plan. Next is 5.2.2, that is about test strategy and test approach. Okay, so there are several strategies that can be employed. Okay, either it could be analytical, or it could be model based, methodical, process compliant, directed, regression hours, or reactive. Okay, so we'll discuss each one of them one by one. That is a test strategy we are talking about. When we say test strategy is analytical, when it is based on analysis of requirements or risks, right? For example, it could be based on the basis of analysis of requirement or risks. If when it's based on analysis, it is analytical in nature. So if it is risk based, generally we beforehand predict what are the risks associated, and then we assign possible weightages for them. So that approach is analytical. Or it could be model based, right? You come up with a model, okay, and the model is on the basis of some required aspect of the product. So you come up with a model, and then you design tests on the basis of model. Okay. It could be methodical. Okay, generally, say for example, a taxonomy of common or likely types of failures you come up with, and you tag the test cases for that particular according to the taxonomy, and then you come up with the test suits in a methodical manner. Or it could be process compliant, which is also standard compliant. You could be following some ISO standard based external rules and standards. Or it could be directed, which is also called as consultative. So basically, you are dependent on advice, guidance, okay, instructions of stakeholders, business domain experts, and technology experts who are outsiders. Okay, they are generally, you could hire a consultant, who may be representing business domain experts, technology experts, and who are generally outsiders. Okay. Next is regression hours. So this is totally based on regression concepts. You decide and develop regression hours test suits. Okay, and test case and test suits, and like it could be reactive in nature. Okay, if it is reactive in nature, like for the standard example is exploratory testing, which is not pre-planned. Okay, you just go on designing and developing test cases on the go. Okay, now let's talk about entry and exit criteria. Like what is entry criteria? Okay, entry criteria is like the bare minimal thing that needs to be met before even the activity begins. Okay, so like how do they look like? Okay, there should be testable requirements or user stories. Okay, before we begin, like there should be test items that have met exit criteria of prior level should be available. This is typically in waterfall. Output of one level is input of the next one. So if it is sequential, generally like exit criteria of one stage is entry criteria for another. And then availability of test environment, you also check whether the test environment needed for the test execution is available or not. And then like we also check whether necessary tools are there or not. Okay, and test data is there or not. Okay, and what are the exit criteria? So when do we conclude like that particular activity? Like either the planned tests have been executed, okay, whatever planned tests that were planned are executed, or the required coverage is met. Okay, the required coverage could be the coverage could be on the basis of requirements, it could be on the basis of code, it could be on the basis of risks or acceptance criteria. Okay. Now, unresolved defects should be within agreed limit when we conclude. So that is one of the criteria. And estimated remaining defects are sufficiently low. And okay, the evaluated levels of reliability, performance, efficiency, usability, security, and other quality criteria should be met. When all these things are met, we say exit criteria is met. Okay. Now let's talk about test execution schedule, that is 5.2.4. Okay. Once various test cases and test procedures are produced and assembled, okay, into test suits can be arranged into test execution schedule. Okay, so basically a test execution schedule will tell which all test suits should be executed in which order. So that is test schedule, and the execution schedule should take into account if it has to take care of prioritization. Prioritization is basically what needs to be executed first. Okay, and if there are any dependencies, if we are dependent on something during test execution, that needs to be taken care of, and regression tests, right, if any, they should be taken care of. And most efficiently, most importantly, efficient order of execution of the test cases should be taken care. Okay. And next is factors influencing test effort. What all could alter the test efforts, right? So test effort estimation involves, first there are two things here. One is estimation part, and another one is actual test effort estimation. So while estimating the effort, right, we predict the amount of test related work that will be needed, and the effort itself is dependent on several factors. Okay, so we'll discuss now factors that could influence the test effort. Risk associated with the product, right? I mean, if the product is the risk is more with certain module, then we need to develop more modules for that risk prone area. So the higher the risk, generally more the effort. Okay, and the quality of test basis, right? What we are taking as a reference for designing or implementing test cases, the quality of that test basis is most important. If test basis is of good quality, effort will be less, right? and vice versa. Okay, the size of the product, right? Now, if the product is mammoth, obviously the effort involved will be more, and complexity of product domain. So, like I have been time and again telling it, it's very context dependent, right? The effort involved for one domain will not be same as another domain. So, simple web applications, mobile applications, the way you design test cases for them versus the kind of test case that you design for mission critical software is very different. Okay, and the requirements for quality characteristics, right? If the quality characteristic requirements are very stringent, the effort will proportionately be high. And then the required level of test documentation. If the mandate is that the documentation should be very detailed, right? The effort also proportionately shoots up, and legal and regulatory compliance, right? So if it is very stringent, then also the effort is high, and development process characteristics, right? Next is development process characteristics. Okay. What are the development process characteristics? Basically, if the organization is very stable and matured, the effort will be less. Okay, and development model in use, right? We discussed about waterfalls, V, and then agile. So in each of those models, the effort is different. The test approach that we are employing, the tools that we are using, test process, and time pressure. All these things govern test efforts. Okay. And next is in 5.2.5 people characteristics. Basically, how do people influence? Basically, skills and experience of the people involved. If the people involved are very skilled or very experienced, okay, the effort will be not same as not skilled and not experienced team. Okay, and the cohesion and leadership decides, right? It also decides the effort involved. How cohesive, how closely the teams work together, and what kind of leadership is there. That also decides. Okay, and in addition to that, number and CV rate of the defect found and amount of work required, amount of rework required govern the test effort. Okay. Next is test estimation techniques, right? In test estimation techniques, there are basically two types of test estimation techniques. One is metrics based, another one is expert based technique. Okay, in metric based technique, we take some former or previous similar project. Okay, and on the basis of that, we make estimations, or there could be very experienced expert in a team, and who are owners of testing tasks. Generally, they do estimation. So that is 5.2.6. So with that, let's conclude 5.2 and let's meet in 5.3.